Today I am going to be exploring this scene. This is a scene from Buckton. I'm going to be exploring it in a range of different ways, and I think I'm saving the best till last. But you let me know in the comments what you think the best of my little sketches were. The first one is not the best one, but it is very important. And this is just a little warm-up where I'm taking really simple shapes, a really simple look at the scene, and just a part of the scene. Now, part of what I'm going to be doing is exploring like different viewpoints, which I think is a really useful sort of exercise to do. Take a scene and look at it in loads and loads of different ways, because we can get really stuck into just copying the photo or just doing what we feel comfortable with. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still going to be doing what I'm most comfortable with initially. It's like a comfort blanket. It makes us feel good and warms us up for trying harder things. This time though, I'm taking that exact same scene, that exact same view, part of the scene, and adding texture. So my lines are wobbling and moving around, and I get the very occasional comment saying, "Oh, it's ridiculous." But you know what? It makes me happy, and I think it adds a lot of character to the scene. So on the left we've got neat lines, and now in the right side we've got interest, a little less accuracy in some ways, and a little bit more wobble, and I think we've already improved it. So I'd say if you think this is ridiculous, that's fine, but I like it. So if I was to vote on my favourite so far, it's definitely the second one. But next, let's try something else even less accurate. So I'm going to really zoom in this time, which isn't something I would often do, and take a close look at this church tower and try and be like silly or playful with the perspective. So you can see I'm bending out those vertical lines. Now, when we do something which is different and exploratory, it can feel really uncomfortable. And I definitely found this really uncomfortable. I wasn't sure how to deal with the steeple here. You can kind of see it going a little bit awry. I tried to cover it up cheekily with a few little textures and brick marks and things, and it didn't help. So I tried some bolder lines, and maybe it started now to sort of feel a bit better to me. Maybe, I'm not sure. But the key about doing these little thumbnails is that it doesn't really matter if something doesn't quite work out for you. Emotionally, you know, it's just a thumbnail. It is an experiment. And these experiments are really important to do because they show us new things. They show us where our skills are lacking, or our vision, in this case for me, is lacking. And they also give us an opportunity to work on those skills. So, for example, I took this and I went, you know what, those bold lines actually did help a bit. So I went back to my other sketch I'm already happy with and started to neaten it up a bit. And this I did like. So here I learned something, I put it into action, and I got a benefit, even though I felt very uncomfortable on the top. Now in the next few, I've kind of set myself what I'm calling a challenge. Now the challenge here is to try less obvious views, things which I'm not immediately sort of seeing as what I would sketch looking at this scene. And these might be things which you think, oh, Toby, but they're really obvious. But that's the sort of the problem with a creative process sometimes is actually we end up not being that creative. We get stuck in our ways. So I get stuck in the kind of views I like sketching, I'm comfortable with sketching, and I forget to look and really like find another nugget, another place I could explore, another way I could explore a scene. So here I'm sort of taking out a crop of the Buckton Towers just above this more modern feeling building, and seeing what happens if I explore that and the slightly sort of murky shadows and less definition really around that. Now something which is scary about these buildings is these like octagonal sides, the sort of crenellated top. So it's another experiment which lets me try out these rather scary textures. It's also another view where we don't actually get the bottom of the scene in. Now this is something I'm very comfortable with, and increasingly I actually just sketch looking up. I think it's a really nice way to get a bit of drama in your scene. But not that long ago I didn't find it that comfortable to not draw the bottom of a scene in. Now here's something I make no apologies for, because I really enjoy adding in this kind of sky-based hatching. I think in an ink heavy scene, it adds something fun. It adds just, a sense of purposefulness into that sky, which can sometimes end up feeling empty if we just used our inky marks. And yes, it's stylized and not everyone likes it. Fair enough. Again, this is the subjectivity of art, isn't it? And this is what these experiments are all about. A couple of little birds to finish off, of course. Vital addition there. And then we'll move on to another view, which is another one which for me is probably even less obvious. Definitely something less exciting or interesting to me, which is this modern building, the one we've got on the right hand side with all of those windows. Now, one of the first YouTube videos I ever did, which did quite well, seems to have stuck almost as a catchphrase, which is don't count the windows. So I didn't count the windows here. I just got them approximate in kind of approximate groups. I did count that there were 3 stories. I felt that was quite important. But you can see the proportions of the windows versus the size of the trees. It isn't right, but it feels okay. And especially for my version of the scene, it feels absolutely okay. What I'm sort of stuck with here is I wasn't sure how to approach the towers in the back, the kind of castle-like building, which now forms the backdrop of the scene. So I started marking it in very gently, and then I kind of just sort of built everything up gradually. The same process as I used for my uncomfortable perspective sketch, really. But I think here more effective because I've warmed up. I've started to get into it. I've started to remember what does work for me and what perhaps doesn't often work for me so well, and just got that balance back. So perhaps now I should have tried that awkward perspective sketch as the next one, but that's not what I'm doing. Because I've sort of recognised I spent all this time and all I've done is look up, and there's other stuff going on in this scene. So now I'm taking a really close look actually down into the left hand corner. I'm not going to call this one obvious at all, but I do think it's quite interesting. You've got the building with a wall in perspective coming towards you. You've got the background of the church, which you somehow have to make not the focus. And then you have this big leading line or this big kind of ominous tree with loads and loads of contrast. And it was just quite an interesting challenge to work out how to do it. And it was another one where I kind of got a bit inky, put down loads of hatching and loads of scribbly textures into the tree. And I end up, there's no way I would sit in this spot and sketch this view. But I end up really liking it. One of my favourites is what I would say from the finished version of this. One of my absolute favourites. And there you go, learned another thing. Perhaps I should be more ready to just look for those weird views which break what I feel I'm normally comfortable with. And then I've got one big one. I left this gap specifically for this sketch because I just thought, you know what, after all of this thinking, I'm going to want to do what comes naturally to me. So we get out the continuous line, we draw along that sort of silhouette, we get the kind of skyline in, and we make it really loose. Still proceeding with a continuous line, start to build up a little bit of the boldness. This is the idea of textures that we were talking about at the very beginning, where I got uncomfortable with the awkward and funky perspective I was trying to be clever with. But here, back in my view, back in my style, and being especially loose with it, it just works. Those little bold lines, again, they come naturally this time. I didn't have to think about it. And the tree becomes a little geometric thing at the edge. And I must say, this one just flowed. This I found, I don't want to call it easy, but it is that kind of flow state where I didn't have to think about it and it just came naturally, and I'm naturally able to say, I like that. Next up, colours. So my last little portrait sketchamadoodle I decided to use just to map out the colours I might use as a little reminder. Now these colours are all by Just Go Sketching, which is a tiny little business in Cornwall. They're all handmade and they're all very lovely. If you're interested in them, they are linked on my supplies link down below, and they do post pretty much worldwide. Certainly I know that people in America and Canada and things like that have got some of these amazing colours. So do check them out if you're interested. If you think that I do good stuff with them, we'll see. I'm sure that they can be used more effectively than just the way I use them. I'm also using my little water brush just because I wanted to take the pressure off. And well, I often say these water brushes are rubbish, so I thought let's remind myself that they do actually have a use as well. The first thing I'm doing is just using those soft umbers and ochres, actually Mars yellow in this case, but that's very like yellow ochre, and just getting kind of bricky tones in. We've got reddy bricks, like that's more the umbers, a little bit of Indian red kind of feel. We've got the more muted tones of the church itself, which I'm kind of making more of a Cotswold stone feel because I like lifting it. I like having that extra bit of vibrance. Then we've got lots of very grey shadows. So adding a little blue into any of these mixes, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, and you kind of tone things down. And I'm just playing initially a first loose wash, getting these different colours moving around, and you can see jumping between all the different thumbnails. No need to go back over them bit by bit. We can just jump around, explore and have a little bit of fun. Soon enough though, it's time to jump into the sky, which is my favourite bit. Here I'm using a beautiful bright cobalt blue. Really love this cobalt blue, along with tiny touches of cerulean, just trying it in there. Not as much of a fan, but I do like the variety it gives. And then I sort of ended up thinking as well, we could probably play with just dropping in little bright bits of turquoise blue. You can see those emerging in a few places. Next, along with the blues, comes some vibrant greens. I wanted to try out different ways of putting in the greens. So on the top middle scene, you can see it's really bold and blocky. And then the others a bit more kind of fluid. Now, as I'm moving around all of these things, they're all kind of drying in turn. So most of my page is kind of dried whilst I've been doing those greens and those blues. So I'm able to come back now with some bolder tones. Again, I'm struggling to save that perspective sketch, but I'm loving the kind of shadowy feel that I'm getting from just adding an extra touch of boldness. Just these kind of painterly marks, I think, are really making these other ones feel finished. Just look at how they come to life a tiny bit more when there's depth and variety coming into those colours. It's of course very easy to overdo it, but looking for the depth and the contrast, particularly in the scenes where I felt that contrast was a key part of why I might choose to sketch that scene, even if I wouldn't normally choose to sketch that scene. Well, I think that's really important. There's also a thing where we can see at the moment it looks a bit cluttered, but that's where the magic happens. We take off our tape, we get space, and suddenly, actually, it feels pretty good. That little unveiling just provides the space for these scenes to kind of glow. Of course, I can't help myself but to fiddle a few final touches here and there, making those marks a little bit bolder. And of course, the most important bit I'll be getting to very shortly is signing all of my little sketches. Now, if you're interested in the sketches on the right, they're another little class I've done, which is actually up on Skillshare and on Patreon. So if you're on either of those platforms with me, then you'll be able to find a sort of breakdown, a step-by-step of a similar process to this, but for sketching everyday objects. And I'd love to see you there, of course. Otherwise, though, I will see you in the next one here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Please do subscribe and like, and let me know which of these was your favourite little sketch.